Hello, I'm Rena, and welcome to Biopic, a podcast story. This is a podcast where we dissect the good, bad, ugly, and absurd of this specific genre of motion picture, the biopic. This bonus episode falls outside of our usual episodes. One of my pet peeves in other people's podcasts is when they banter on about things having nothing to do with the show's subject matter. We usually speak for over 2 hours while recording episodes, then cut them back to 60 to 90 minutes, because we don't believe that movie podcasts should be longer than the commonly accepted minimum length for a feature film. I dislike about 90% of host banter. It bores me. I don't care about your role-playing game, or what you're drinking tonight, or what your t-shirt says, or the cute thing that your pet or your kid did, or what panel sessions you're going to sit through at Comic-Con and Ice and Fire Con. I don't want to hear about your personal life, because that's not why I downloaded your podcast. I'm not really interested in what you ate for lunch today. The only time I don't mind sitting through host banter is when an actual friend is hosting, like my friend Alana at the brilliant Graphic Policy podcast, or on Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk, because Neil and his guests are brilliant enough to be worth listening to when they're sitting around and shooting the breeze. Host banter is in some ways worse than commercials, because if there are commercials, I can flick through that with the 15-second thing in iTunes, and then flick back with the 30-second thing to minimize the amount of commercials that I have to sit through. But if hosts are bantering about stuff that has nothing to do about the subject matter that I downloaded the podcast for, I don't know how far to flick forward. I can miss good stuff and then go back, and they're still bantering, or finally get to the good stuff only to find that they'll start bantering again. There's no telling when the pointless, unrelated host banter will end, or whether I'm missing interesting things that were the reason I downloaded the podcast in the first place. But some listeners incomprehensibly like host banter. So I cobbled together some of the host banter that we cut from our first batch of episodes. I set up this episode so that I could learn to audio splice in Riverside.fm. If you are someone who enjoys host banter, we're all allowed to like different things, and I'm sorry if I dissed you. And here is some of our irrelevant host banter. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Yes. Love Michael Shannon, but he has a biopic coming out about Andrew Garfield, and there are definitely other biopics that he's in that are feature films, so we can cover those first.
Sarah, did you mean Andrew Garfield, the Spider-Man actor, or James Garfield, the president who died of complications from a bullet wound?
Oh, I meant Andrew Garfield, the Spider-Man actor, who also was killed by Charles Guiteau.
So I
meant President Garfield. But once again, we're showcasing where our skill sets are, and mine are not on the intelligence side of things. Yeah, that's what I get for ad-libbing.
So I thought that Drusilla was not much of an actress.
She was not much of an actress.
She was just
blank. The hair. Well, also, another thing that I felt was hampering a lot of the performances is that you could see ADR. The entire film was probably re-recorded over audio after the fact. And a lot of those actors, English probably wasn't their first, second, or third language. I think I'm, again, being overly sympathetic. But she had beautiful hair. Beautiful hair.
Could have been. No, that does not look.
That was not a wig. That was real hair, and it was beautiful.
It just, this beautiful, like, golden,
glossy blonde, beautiful hair. Oh,
not like that butter yellow where it's fake. It's like the natural sunlit, shade brighter than golden toffee.
Yes. Okay.
But that's not part of the film. If that's her real hair, then it's not a production effect that we add points for.
No.
Okay.
I did, but no, it isn't something that it's...
Yeah. All right.
And also just the fact that, like, you do have to kind of be a little inventive when you're doing Roman Empire stories, because there's no way of knowing some of these things.
Well, so the thing where he keeps saying, with the argument that, oh, I'll move the capital out to Alexandria, he was early in the generations of the Roman emperors, and in Egypt, the pharaoh claimed to be a god, so he could have been taking inspiration from the Ptolemies, where it was like, I'll declare myself immortal because since the pharaohs married their sisters, and I'm a god, and we declared my predecessors gods, that he was taking inspiration from this tradition of, like, the god ruler who marries their sister. That was an actual thing, although I don't know. It's sort of a chicken and egg proposition. Like, is it Egyptian inspiration first, and then I really love my sister in a creepy way? Or is it, I love my sister in a creepy way, ergo I'm going to copy the Egyptians?
I mean, I do love a ruler that finds a workaround so they can have sex with the woman they want to have sex with.
Based on another culture's mythology.
Yeah, bravo. Bravo.
Oh, I am.
You're putting Sir Thomas More to shame there, with your seeking out other cultures to justify your lust. So, yeah.
How was that putting Thomas More to...
Wasn't Thomas More Henry VIII's guy?
Until Henry VIII had him beheaded.
Yeah, but they were fighting about Protestantism.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
The workaround. The Talmudic loophole, if you will.
Right.
Justified.
But More is a saint in the Catholic Church.
So.
Okay.
Anyway.
Maybe it was a different Thomas, but Henry VIII had a lot of Thomases.
Yeah. I don't know I want to be clear here. I don't know anything. And, and Spielberg's right there. He can just walk one of those real dinosaurs over from Jurassic Park and have that dinosaur there. Like, did a dinosaur help draft the Emancipation Proclamation? Maybe.
I wish that a dinosaur would have used as Jefferson Davis.
Yeah, little dinosaur attacking Nathan Bedford Forrest with a little hand.
Sarah is doing flippy little T-Rex hands. It's adorable.
T-Rex hands at Gettysburg.
Yay!
T-Rex hands at Shiloh.
Yay! T-Rex. T-Rex shows up at the Constitutional Convention.
T-Rex helps pass the Prohibition.
No, I Prohibition was a bad idea.
It was a bad idea, and that's why the T-Rex had to go extinct.
You mean T-Rex was still around?
T-Rex was still around in the 1920s. What do you think caused the Great Depression?
So T-Rex was still around in 1919 and caused Prohibition to pass and then caused the Great Depression.
I mean, maybe T-Rex was a Southerner like Woodrow Wilson and was born, or this particular T-Rex was born during the Civil War like Woodrow Wilson, so had like progressive ideas, but was also crazy racist.
Well, yeah, T-Rex was racist against people because he ate them.
I mean, have you watched The Great War on American Experience? Because, you see some of those tanks going through in like the Battle of the Somme, and one of those tanks had to be a Triceratops, right? And those planes, the Red Baron flew a pterodactyl.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
why you couldn't shoot him down.
We don't know about any of this because of like chemtrails.
Brontosaurus caused the Dust Bowl. They ate all the greens. Yeah.
I believe
they ate all the greens.
Okay, I'm going to cut all this down to an efficient 15-minute script and probably leave out everything past a version of Lincoln with a dinosaur.
The Velociraptor hated Catholics and helped make sure that Al Smith didn't get elected in 1928.
So does that mean the Velociraptor was a know-nothing, or am I thinking of a different anti-Catholic era?
I think that's a different anti-Catholic era because it was Al Smith versus Hoover. Thank you, community theater production of Annie. And Al Smith was Catholic, but was a good dude and did not want and wanted to end the prohibition. And it was one of the first country versus city mouse elections.
Oh my gosh, so it set the pattern. Well, my grandma Henrietta refused to date men who voted for Hoover because she was cool.
I love your Aunt Henrietta for that.
My grandma Henrietta, she's the professor's mommy.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah.
Henrietta's a great name.
It is.
We'll have theme months coming up at some point. For example, we had the idea to do and then they all died in a plane crash month, but we have this year pretty much planned out.
We're probably going to pick a time in 2025 when it's warm out so that we're not tempting fate by putting those out right before someone actually dies in a plane crash, someone famous, even though flight is the safest way to travel. The reason why so many famous people, a disproportionate percentage that get a lot of attention, die in plane crashes is because they're always getting on rinky-dink little charter flights. And they have big egos and one engine in their plane. They think that it's so important that they leave now, that concepts like fog and hurricanes don't apply to them, and the pilot is afraid to not take off because so-and-so will be mad at them. Or worse, some famous people think they can fly the plane themselves.
Fly commercial.
And also, you make yourself look like a big hypocrite, Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio, by flying on environmentally unfriendly private jets while preaching environmentalism. Stop making people who agree with you look bad by taking charter flights and private jets. I personally don't care if you get private jets, so long as you buy the carbon offsets, but you're undermining the causes you espouse by creating fodder for whataboutists and making life hard for well-meaning coastals who have to put up with conservative relatives at Thanksgiving. Just get on the commercial flight and mingle with the salt of the earth in first class, okay?
DiCaprio could afford to have someone, physically carry him around on their back.
He's never gonna fucking hear this.
No, I'm sure he's not. But I'm also sure that my outrage at his private flights is duly noted.
There are films that would be less torture but more boring. The worst biopic I've ever seen is Walt Before Mickey, which is a lot of these things, but also extremely boring. And I have to, does this deserve to possibly score below Walt Before Mickey? And I would say...
What is that about? Is it just about him failing?
It's a movie about the early days of Walt Disney before he invented Mickey Mouse. It was not created with any sign-off from Disney Studios, and I watched it because when I've seen something I love and it makes me feel great, I go looking for something similar, and I always find it regretting it. And what had happened was I just watched Saving Mr. Banks and loved it. So I was like, where is there more of this? And I found this cheaply made early life bio of Walt Disney that Disney clearly didn't participate in it, so it's just heartbreak over losing Oswald the Rabbit, who Disney hadn't reacquired from the studio that Oswald wound up with yet. And it has John Heder as Roy Disney, like Napoleon Dynamite. Low production values, wooden acting, bad script, don't care. Whoever's playing Lillian Disney in it is terrible. I could go on and on, but that was more boring than this. So, and that's not the film I was thinking of in the Do We Care. That was, yeah. Anyway.
Probably not as many penises in that movie either.
No. But there's one scene where he's sobbing over something because he's poor and broke, and then he sees a mouse. An actual mouse. It's bad.
To your point about things that drive us nuts about biopics, they just kind of are like, hey, I wrote this song.
Sarah?
Okay, let's sing it. And then Ray's like, I've got the perfect intro, and boom, song, we have a hit. And maybe that's the way it happens when people write music. I don't know, but I would suspect that it could be portrayed with more complexity and in a much more compelling way. But it's just boom, 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 we got a song. And then...
What that scene reminded me of was a much lower production value video that I watched in my Anthro Bio 101 class freshman year at Caligula. It was about when they found the bones for Lucy. So they had all these paleontologists who were filming this thing in the mid-'80s dress up as themselves in the mid-60s and say the things they thought they remembered about when they found the bone, and they put on like tie-dyed shirts, and they were doing this imitation of what they remembered themselves saying 20 years earlier about, oh, let's name these bones after Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And that's what this scene in the much higher production value Oliver Stone film reminded me of. I spent about 5 or 6 hours in Père Lachaise, and it's an incredible place, and I made a point of not going to the grave of Jim Morrison.
Oh,
I left a lipstick kiss on Oscar Wilde's grave, and I noted someone had written on it, "The world has changed forever because you are made of gold and ivory. I love you, Natalie." And I have a photo of that graffiti somewhere. And I should apologize for that now, because a friend of mine sort of knows one of Oscar Wilde's great-great-grandchildren, and he says that it's a pain for the Wilde family and for everyone involved when they have to clean all the lipstick kisses off the grave every few years. Yeah, and there's this some guy who was some kind of like French ambassador to the US early in the country's history built this 100-meter tall conical object to himself. And it's a fascinating place, but and actually you should edit some of this because I'm going on a digression, but I'm proud that I deliberately did not go near the grave of Jim Morrison, because the whole area is covered with graffiti and hippie stuff, and it's gross. And the point of this is that even in death, Jim Morrison is a bad neighbor.
I have nothing to add there except watching this and seeing his grave. Like it feels like Jim Morrison isn't. He's worshipped in this way that's very self-serving. In terms of like what he means to people, like it starts internally rather than like him like living a great life as a heroic person, or even being like a really fulfilled artist. Like people are like, that music saved my life, but it's all about what he made people feel and imagine, and that's kind of what this film is. I don't think it's an accurate depiction of Jim Morrison as a human being. I do think it's all the stuff that Oliver Stone thinks is cool about him, which makes me think that Oliver Stone's like a 13-year-old boy inside, because
yeah, I was about to ask you if we could put this on the list of movies we're never doing.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Now the only film from the list of films we're never doing where the title's out there. Okay.
Yeah. I will do this movie once we set up our Patreon page if you give me $10,000.
$10,000.
Yeah.
$10,000 each will do this movie, and we will do it as we see it. We're not going to give it a good review just because you paid us $20,000. We're going to do it like we normally do, and you don't get to give us feedback on what you thought.
Yeah, and it would be a violation of my oath of office as someone who got a liberal arts degree to not look at this fairly as art and film. I won't be nice just to be nice. Although if it is actually good, I will also acknowledge that, but I don't think it's going to be.
I can imagine a world in which that's just a poorly done trailer, and maybe some things are done well enough that it gets like a 4.5 and doesn't qualify for second opinion. And it's just like not a good trailer.
I cannot imagine a world where this wasn't the best that they have from this movie.
If I'm being the nice one, then this trailer has really messed us up, Sarah.
Yeah. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm completely unsympathetic to everyone involved in this motion picture, except Mina Suvari and Dan Lauria.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone else, I'm like, you chose your destructor. I can't help you. I also just want to mention here that I know about How Did This Get Made thanks to you and the time that you stayed in our house for Superstorm Sandy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember. And I remember that you expressed concern that I was sitting in the chair in front of the big glass window, and I pointed out that if I sat there, the worst that would happen would be that, like, the window would break over my head and I'd be fishing bits of glass out of my scalp for the next 20 years, which happens to people and it's normal and they go about their lives. But if we moved, it would shatter on your face. And yeah, all of us who were in the apartment agreed that it was a good idea that I keep sitting there. I'm glad that, like, I saved you, even though nothing bad happened to the plate glass window.
Me too. And I'm also really glad that you gave me the gift of that podcast.
I wanted to address our first bit of listener feedback. My mother started listening to us. She said that she was pleasantly surprised. She said that it got boring in the Doors episode when I read the full Wikipedia entry on all the inaccuracies because it took 9 minutes. And she was totally right. I didn't realize that was how long it would go on for before we recorded. And I thought, it'll be okay. We'll just, like, let it breathe. But she's absolutely right. After this, we're never going to read any excerpt that takes longer than Unchained Melody. If that's still too boring, I would propose that we limit the length of the excerpt to the length of I Want to Be Sedated. But my mother's other issue, Sarah, was that we curse too much. And she acknowledged that we did explain we want to be able to quote things as they happen and not apologize for it every time. But when she told us that we cursed too much, I threw you under the bus, Sarah.
What?
I threw you under the bus because I was too chicken to say, no, Mom, I'm a grown-up woman, and I curse, and you need to accept me and love me as I am, and I am a woman who curses. So how? I'm a liar, and I curse.
You know she's going to call my mom, right?
To be fair, Sarah, you never said you have to curse, Rena. You have never said, Rena, if you don't meet a daily F-bomb quota, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. You aren't cool if you don't curse on this podcast. That never happened.
To be fair, I would have said that to you when I was 13, but now it's okay. You can curse as little or as much as you want, and I trust you to say as many F-bombs as you need to.
I guess that thus far, that's how we're responding to feedback. We are thoughtful, and we'll be back.
I haven't gotten any thoughtful feedback yet, except for the people who I've told you have to listen to it. And then I say, aren't we fun? And then they say, yes. And any feedback that I've gotten is due to, this benevolent terrorism. I can also promise you that my mother will never listen to this. My life outside of this podcast would make you all incredibly sad. You don't want to hear about it.
I'm just going to cut anything I say about my boring life outside of this podcast because keeping it in after that diatribe would be like hypocrisy that does not fall under my sentiment that people need to have space for nuance.
Yeah. And as I said, my life is very boring and I don't want to talk about it and you don't want to hear about it.
I do want to hear about your life. I do want to hear about your life. I'm your friend. It's not boring. And then...
Oh, not you.
And then I will cut that shit from the edit.
The you. The you of the world. No one wants to know.
Yeah.
No one wants to know what I ate for lunch today.
Oh, I hate it. Oh, God. Sarah, I hate it when podcast hosts mention what they're drinking, like what fucking smoothie or cocktail are you drinking?
I don't be drinking the
care.
same
You're
thing, which is
my
Diet
time.
Coke. There, that's handled.
Yeah. It's Rena again, singing some snatches of public domain music badly so that we won't have to pay for them. But that was irrelevant host banter and outtakes from other podcasts that we've done, jumbled in together. If you have enjoyed Biopic, a podcast story, please leave us a 5-star review on the iTunes store or wherever you get your podcasts. And please tell a friend, or better yet, plural friends. We are relying on word of mouth to help build the podcast for now. see you again on Tuesday with our official episode. Have a terrific batch of days, everyone. See you soon.